capital. So I said redemption of preference share capital and the buyback of securities coming up later are twin images of the same concept. Both of them are going to reduce the share capital of the company. We are exclusively dealing with the conditions which apply to redemption of preference share capital as of now. Once we complete that, we will extend. We will use the same platform and move on to the buyback of securities, which is Section 68, a major junction in the Companies Act. But before I start, I wanted to show you something which I see in the newspaper today. Today's newspaper, The Hindu, just something related to what we have studied before. If you can make a cutting of it and keep it, I will tell you the page. If it is there in the Hindu, I think it must be there available in any of the local Malayalam newspapers also. If you turn over the first page, you see page number 3. Reliance Industries Limited is closing its issue today. Reliance Industries has made a rights issue. Obviously, the issue opening advertisement would have come some time back. I don't remember when, but if you can take a cutting of that, the third page completely, it should be available in the Malayalam newspapers also. Cut it and keep it and compare it. When you are revising the concept of issue of share capital, you will see a lot of the things that we have studied in that advertisement, like the concept of the issue management team, the period for which a subscription must be opened, and the concept of price band if it's a book building issue and so on. Okay, that's nice, good. So you can cut both and keep. May 22nd when the issue was open. Reliance Industries Limited is closing its rights issue today. Within another maybe 3 hours or so, it will close. And it's a rights issue, which means I'll come into that a little later. Maybe I'll be starting that today, what a rights issue is. A rights issue is something which is made exclusively to the existing shareholders of the company in order to, raise further funds or capital by making the shareholders subscribe to additional shares based on the shares that they are already holding. The difference between a rights issue and a bonus issue is that a rights issue is paid for, whereas a bonus issue is free of cost from the point of view of the shareholder. But from the point of view of the company, this thing is internally funded. It is the reserves which are capitalized in connection with the bonus issue. Right, so coming back to where we were, I had come to the conditions. Actually, it is section 55. The redemption of preference share capital, there are certain conditions subject to which a company redeems its preference share capital. The redemption conditions are going back in the same order. Number 1, the condition number 1 was that it must be authorized by the articles of the company. The articles give the company a general power to redeem preference shares at any point in time without giving any specific terms and conditions. So for the specific terms and conditions, you have an authorization by a special resolution giving the specificities or the specific terms and conditions for that particular issue. So articles will generally give you a blanket approval to buy back or to redeem preference shares at any time. The particular redemption which you are doing today will have certain terms and conditions. Those must be approved by a special resolution. I remember having asked you the question, and I had asked you also, I told you, I'll be asking this very often. When the articles authorizes something, why do you need a special resolution again? And the concept was, articles is a general blanket power The special resolution is for that specific point of time, that specific redemption, the preference share plan. The third condition was that the shares which were proposed to redeem, preference shares proposed to be redeemed, must be fully paid up, because redemption is repayment, and repayment arises only when payment is complete. So that is the third condition. All these you have already noted. The fourth condition is that the redemption funds for the redemption may be raised either through a fresh issue of securities which is made exclusively for that purpose. To redeem preference shares, I issue debentures, or to redeem preference shares, I issue preference shares again, or to redeem preference shares, I issue equity shares. So I raise one long-term fund to redeem preference share capital which has become due. Or it could also be out of the existing free reserves of the company which are available for distribution as dividends. So to put it in a different form, if you have existing free reserves, excellent. Otherwise, go for a fresh issue of securities. So these were the four conditions. The fifth also we had covered. Similarly, just like the capital portion of redemption is funded out of a fresh issue of securities or the existing free reserves, the premium on redemption of share capital may be funded only out of the existing free reserves of the company. And I have specifically made a mention, this is where we stopped the last time, that the securities premium account shall not be considered to be a free reserve for that purpose, at least for this purpose. The securities premium account is a capital reserve for which the utilization is specifically restricted or stipulated by the Act. The securities premium can be utilized only for certain purposes, and when you say utilize, debited only for certain specific purposes. This is why you cannot, or it is specifically provided that securities premium account shall not be used to fund the premium on the redemption or the premium on the buyback of securities. This is where we have to start. Right? Number one, articles. Number two, special resolution. Number three, fully paid up. Number four, either out of a fresh issue or out of existing free reserves, otherwise available for distributing dividends. And number five, the premium on redemption, funded out of existing free reserves of the company, but not the securities premium account. Now, there's one last condition. Why I had stopped the last time was I wanted you fresh to understand this sixth condition. The sixth condition is something very, very crucial, very omnipotent. It has repercussions across the different subjects that you study. And I will be coming to the aspect on connecting this with the other subjects. So remember I told you that from the last chapter onwards especially, the interlinking or the interconnection between the different subjects for certain specific topics is very important. This is a typical example of that. So you have taken 5 conditions. Now the 6th condition, I just roughly lay it out. Then we come, that is the most crucial condition here actually. Condition number 6 is that if you are funding the redemption out of the existing free reserves of the company, there are 2 sources of funding the redemption. 1, fresh issue of securities of any class. 2, utilizing the existing free reserves for that purpose. If you are utilizing the existing free reserves of the company, then the company shall transfer an amount equal to the face value of redeemed capital, redeemed preference share capital, to a separate reserve called the capital redemption reserve account. I repeat, if the redemption of preference share capital is funded out of the existing free reserves of the company, then you have to pass a journal entry transferring the face value of the preference share capital redeemed to a separate reserve account called the capital redemption reserve account. This capital redemption reserve account can be used only for a bonus issue or only to be capitalized in connection with issue of bonus shares. Right now, take down the condition. Then we will play on that. We will connect all of them together. Number 6, condition number 6. Where the redemption of capital is funded out of the existing free reserves, where the capital is redeemed out of existing free reserves of the company, an amount equal to the face value, of the redeemed capital, shall be transferred. An amount equal to the face value of the capital redeemed shall be transferred to a separate account. To be called the capital redemption reserve account. Capital redemption, REDEMPTION, capital redemption reserve account. Capital redemption reserve account. You can put it in brackets, CRR account. Within brackets, CRR account. Close brackets, comma, which may be utilized. Only for a subsequent issue, of fully paid up bonus shares. subsequent issue of fully paid up bonus shares. Okay, now I am removing all the other conditions. Okay, I'm being selective in erasing for asking this question, coming to a question here. Putting myself in the position of a common man, and you are chartered accountants. I am coming to a question of the logic of the rationale behind this. My usual painful why. What is the condition again? Let me repeat the condition. I know your condition number 6 looks like a huge sentence. It's one big sentence running in different lines without much of punctuation marks in between. I'll just go through it again. If at all the company is funding the redemption of preferred share capital out of its existing free reserves, then that is, they are not involved in a fresh issue of equity shares at all. Existing free reserves are being utilized then. An amount equal to the face value of the capital that you have redeemed must be transferred to a separate reserve account called the CRR account, or the Capital Redemption Reserve account. My question to you, a chartered accountant, as an intern student, is: it is after all just a journal entry. See, what is the journal entry here? Let us say I am utilizing the reserve, general reserve. General reserve account debtor to capital redemption reserve account. Let us say the redeemable preferred share capital is 1 crore. I pass this journal entry, and also to be complete, I put the narration, being amount transferred to, from, as per section 55 of the Companies Act. You put that in the narration, nothing wrong. In the ചോദ്യം simple ആണ്. ഇത് വെറും ഒരു journal entry ആണ്. Why does the Companies Act have to make it mandatory for a company to pass a journal entry? Now, you are chartered accountants. Let me just be a little clear. Let us define the term journal entry. I want you to be very, very, what do you say, professional about it. The term journal entry, I think I have explained this before. Journal entry means an accounting entry, a double entry, in which neither the debit nor the credit is cash or bank. When you record a business transaction and the debit side is a bank or cash account, you don't call it a journal entry. You call it a receipt entry. Similarly, if in a transaction being recorded, if the credit entry or the credit leg of the transaction is bank or cash, then we call it a payment entry. So strictly speaking, receipt entries and payments entries are not journal entries. A journal entry is an entry in which neither the debit nor the credit, any component, is bank or cash. Salaries account debtor to salaries payable account. Rent receivable account debtor to rent account. Depreciation account debtor to fixed assets account. These are journal entries. Just like them, this is a journal entry. I am debiting my liquid reserve, the free reserve which I propose to utilize, and credit capital redemption reserve account. And according to the condition, sometime in future, this capital redemption reserve account can be used only for issue of bonus shares. So what will the journal entry then become? When I actually do that later, capital redemption reserve account debtor to equity share capital account, meaning the issue of fully paid up shares as bonus shares to the shareholders in the proportion of 2 for every 5 held, 4 for every 7 held, 3 for every 5 held. So my question is simple. This journal entry, what purpose does it serve? Why should you pass this journal entry? Question number 1. Wording the question differently. What will happen if the journal entry is not passed? It is after all a journal entry. General reserve account letter, reserve fund account letter, P&L account letter, to capital redemption reserve account. And maybe 2 months later, 3 months later, 1 year later, you will debit the capital redemption reserve account and credit equity share capital. My question is, why is it necessary? I told you the why is the most dangerous question in any provision, in any new concept that you learn. Try to come to the why of it. If you come to the why of it, you get a logic behind it. Because nothing is illogical in all the subjects that you study. I can give you that guarantee. Be it accounts, FM, taxation, costing, law, auditing. Everything that you do has a reasonable logic behind it, or a logical reasoning behind it. Nothing is without purpose. The question is, what will happen if this simple journal entry is not passed? Now, none of you is answering. So, I will take an example to illustrate this. Now, you have all the conditions. I am taking an example to illustrate the importance of that journal entry. That journal entry is so superb. It is so thoughtful that the purpose is something you can't imagine as of now. When the redemption of preference share capital is funded out of existing free reserves, please transfer an amount equal to the face value of that capital that you redeemed, exclude the premium, the face value of the redemption, which should be transferred to a separate reserve account called the capital redemption reserve account, the CRR account, which may be subsequently utilized only for issuing fully paid up bonuses. To illustrate this, I'll just take an example of a balance sheet, a very simple balance sheet, in fact, 3 balance sheets. I'm taking 3 traditional T-form balance sheets. It's actually an abstract, not a full balance sheet. Redeemable, among other things. All these balance sheets are extracts, inter alia. Other things are there, I'm picking up only these. Redeemable preference share capital, free reserves, cash and bank. I'm going to reproduce these are all free reserve, cash and bank. Redeemable preference share capital, free reserve, cash and bank. Let's take simple figures for you to understand. After the case here, redeemable preference share capital is 1,000. Free reserves is 250. Cash balance is 1,180. This is balance sheet 1. In balance sheet 2, redeemable preference share capital is 1,000. Free reserves is 1,180. Cash and bank balance is 320. You can take it in anything, thousands, lakhs, crores, whatever. Balance sheet 3. Redeemable preference share capital 1,000. Free reserves 1,180. Cash and bank balance 1,240. Now, I am quite sure that you have done redemption of preference share capital in the company accounts. If it is not done, this will help you when you come to written accounts. Here I am looking at it completely from a legal perspective. But then I am feeding in the figures or the numbers to supplement the law. Take balance sheet 1, or the case of company number 1. Redeemable preference share capital is 1,000. Reserves and surplus or free reserves is 250. Cash balance is 1,180. My question is, how will you fund this redemption of preference share capital? What is the situation? You have cash, but you don't have reserves. In this case, you have to make a fresh issue of equity shares or any shares because you don't have the funds to redeem preference share capital. Now, as a chartered accountant, you should understand that every expenditure, I'm using my words carefully, every expenditure has two limbs or two legs. Every expenditure must be, number 1, provided for, and number 2, paid for. You understand? Every expenditure should be provided for and it should be paid for. When you provide for it, it will hit your profitability. When you pay for it, it will hit your liquidity. So every expenditure hits you in two places, provided it's a revenue expenditure. Even otherwise, the capital expenditure will hit your financial position and your liquidity. Machinery account debtor to bank account. Bank account debtor to machinery account. Depending on whether you're selling or purchasing machinery. Now, when I mention the condition that the redemption of preference share capital may be made out of existing free reserves, there is an assumption that you have the money for it. And that is the case of this company. You have reserves of 1,180 and you have cash of 1,240. You can use the existing free reserves for the redemption of preference share capital because you have the money for it. So here is a case where you have the money but not the funds. Here it is the reverse. You have the funds but not the money for it. So the solution in cases 1 and 2 is both fresh issue or so I'm teaching a little bit of accountancy also here, financial management also here. An expenditure must be provided for and paid for. Salary account debtor to salary payable account debtor to bank. Electricity charges to electricity charges payable, electricity charge payable to bank. Interest paid to interest outstanding to bank. So every expenditure is provided for and paid for. When section 55 or section 68 of the Companies Act says you can fund your redemption or your buyback of securities from existing free reserves, it is naturally understood that it is an assumption that you have the money to pay for it. If you don't have the money to pay for it, the provision is not, sorry, you can finish only the first part, the second part cannot be. For example, in this case, can I tell my redeemable preference shareholders, look at my balance sheet, I have excellent reserves, so please go home without paying them? They need money. The amount must be shelled out in cash. I need the money for that. and I need profits for that. Even if you don't have profits, you may incur a loss. So in this case, where you have the money but not the funds, you have to make a fresh issue. In this case, where you have the funds but not the money, you still have to make a fresh issue. You can utilize your existing free reserves as a sixth condition for redemption only in this case. So that condition pertains to this situation where you have money as well as the funds. Now, technically in financial management, we have names for these balance sheets or these companies. This company is called cash rich. It has cash but no funds. This company is called fund rich. And this company is called a balanced company. It is able to reflect money in respect of its profits. This company is not able to reflect its profits for its cash. Cash may have come from capital sources. In this case, it's not able to reflect cash for the profits that it has made. Capital expenditure must have been a lot of capital expenditure. That's our interpretation of these balance sheets. So this is called a balanced company. This is called a cash-rich company. And this is called a fund-rich company or reserve-rich company. So forget about the first two. In these two cases, anyway, you need to make a fresh issue of capital. So the sixth condition does not pertain to them, but I am referring to this one. In the case of a company which is balanced, that sixth condition is going to play a role. I go back to my sixth condition. If a company is funding the redemption of preference share capital out of its free reserves, like which can be done in this case, an amount equal to the face value of the capital deed should be transferred to a capital redemption reserve account. Let us imagine for a moment that this condition does not exist, that there is no such condition. Look at what will happen to the balance sheet. In the balance sheet, this thing will vanish. Redeemable preferential capital will become zero. I'm only worried about the last term entry. Redeemable preferential capital account ledger to redeemable preferential holders account. Redeemable preferential holders account ledger to bank account. You pass on the intermediate entries there. I am worried about the cash payment. So the redeemable preferential capital will go down to zero. And what will happen here? Cash and bank will come down to 2 balance sheet tallies. Now, my question was this. I'm going to answer my own question. What will happen if the journal entry is not passed? That is, free reserves account debtor to capital redemption reserve account. If that journal entry is not required to be passed and if company law does not prescribe for that, the people at the bottom here, that is the creditors, will have a problem because the leverage of the company is increasing. The company's debt equity ratio will leap up, it will skyrocket. And they will start asking their money back. They will say, today you are redeeming preference share capital. Tomorrow you will buy back equity share capital. So day after tomorrow, there will be nothing on the top left of the balance sheet. Which means the owners may have pulled out their money. And this company is completely feeding on OPM, other people's money. Therefore, we anticipate that you're expecting losses, so you're pulling away your funds first, so we want our funds back. Which means the creditors in the balance sheet is a population always looking at the top of the balance sheet and saying, അങ്ങനെ ഒരു പക്ഷിയുണ്ട് പൂർണ്ണചന്ദ്രൻ വന്നാൽ ഇങ്ങനെ നോക്കി നിൽക്കും. And that too on one leg. What is that? Skylark, Chakoram, എന്തോ ഈ ക്രെഡിറ്റേഴ്സ് ഒക്കെ അങ്ങനെയാണ്. They are at the bottom of the balance sheets, always looking at the top to see if leverage or debt equity ratio is affected. The moment the debt equity ratio crosses a tolerable level, they will start creating confusion. They will start murmuring that this company is likely to wind up. Our funds may be stuck, so let us somehow pull out our funds now. Long term item, short term item, secure or unsecure item. That is the reason why this entry is required to be used. Besides, I'm asking you as an accountant, when you say you have utilized your existing free reserves, show me the entry for utilizing that reserve. There's nothing. I'm deemed to have utilized my existing reserve. That's a problem in accountancy. Utilizing a reserve in your journal entry. That's the second reason. Now what will happen? Free reserves, the entry of it passes, free reserves account debtor 1,000 to capital redemption reserve account 1,000. So this will become 180 and capital redemption reserve account will become 1,000. So by passing this journal entry, I'm only telling my creditors, don't worry about the debt equity ratio. That is not affected because this capital redemption reserve account is nothing but equity share capital. It can't be used for anything else. Our redeemable preference share capital താഴ്ന്നാലും ഇറങ്ങിയാലും കുറഞ്ഞാലും capital redemption reserve account. So your debt equity ratio is not affected. Beautiful, beautiful. Just imagine when you're making a provision in company law for redemption of preference share capital, buyback of securities, why do you have to worry about the creditors? But that has been done here. So in the long run, the Companies Act has imagined that the creditors of the company may object to it and made it mandatory to pass that journey. This is the difference between a fresh issue of securities and using your existing reserves. When you make a fresh issue of securities, you get both. You get funds, you get cash. അവിടെ പ്രിഫറൻസ് ഷെയർ ക്യാപിറ്റൽ പോയാലും കുഴപ്പമില്ല, വേറെ എന്തെങ്കിലും വരും. This is why when you are using your existing free reserves, this journal entry becomes necessary because it is lopsided or it is one-sided. It is only funds and it is not cash. So the logic behind passing that journal entry or transferring from the existing free reserves to capital redemption reserve account is to ensure that the creditors are unaffected by an increase in leverage. Leverage, financial management, operating leverage, financial leverage, combined leverage. Such a beautiful word, leverages. Leverage comes from the word lever. If I ask you as a chartered accountant, what is an ideal debt equity ratio? What is your answer? What is a preferable debt equity ratio? You must have studied this in financial management or accounts. An ideal, a desirable debt equity ratio 2:1 എന്നാണ് പറയാറ്. Now if I ask you, if my debt equity ratio is 5:1, is it good or bad? You will say, no, bad, prohibited, sir, bad, they will be taken to jail. That's what the accountant says. For the finance manager, debt equity ratio of 5:1 is excellent, provided your creditors don't make noise. You're pulling your creditors like a rubber band. Till when will they tolerate a debt equity ratio? 2:1, 3.5:1, 4.2:1, 6:1, the rubber band will break. And they will say, no. That is financial management. Higher the debt equity ratio, better it is for the company, because you have borrowed little. That is what financial management teaches. Accountancy is the typical subject of a Brahmin. It is very conventional. It is very traditional. Whatever you have been doing yesterday, do today also, do tomorrow also, day after tomorrow also. You have rules for the game. And every time you play the game, those rules apply. That is accounts. Typical Brahmin subject. This is the secret of a Brahmin. One important characteristic feature of a Brahmin is he does the same thing at the same time every time. That breakfast, lunch, dinner, rituals, ablutions. I'm not talking this generation of Brahmin. Now, financial accounting is a typical Brahmin subject. Financial management is exactly the opposite. If I give a problem in financial management to a class of 50 students, 50 students can come out with 100 answers. It all depends on how you look at it. So debt equity ratio of 5:1, 6:1, beautiful if the creditors don't use it. See the word leverage. Leverage comes from the word liver. Liver is a bar. It's a stick, a rod. Isaac Newton had told us that if you want to move a huge rock manually, it takes a lot of effort. 6-7 people. Newton said, you just put a rod below that, a lever below that, and push the lever. The rock will move. That's how the word leverage came. Here, that lever is debt. And according to Isaac Newton, the longer the lever, the easier it is to pull off that stone, to roll off that stone. Maybe at one particular level, one finger will be enough to move this rock. So the longer the lever, the lesser is the effort. In financial management, the longer that lever, higher is the returns for the equity shareholders, provide the expected return from the utilization of that capital is higher than its cost. If I need 50 lakhs for a project, financial management says, don't issue shares. Take a debt. If you can get 50 lakhs at 10% cost, and if this 50 lakhs is going to earn 13%, take it by form of a debt. Once you pay that interest on the debt, the balance becomes available for equity shareholders. Beautiful. That's how the word leverage came. Leveraging on capital, leveraging on debt, increasing the debt component in your total capital structure. So in order to protect the creditors from a leveraging like that, this journal entry is passed. I agree, it is only a journal entry. but look at the impact of the journal entry on the balance sheet. And besides, it gives you an avenue to disclose or to display the utilization of reserves, which otherwise cannot be done in accountancy. So that is the logic behind it. You put that condition there as the sixth one. Let me see if I remember the condition of written. When the redemption of capital is funded out of existing free reserves of the company, then an amount equivalent to the face value of the capital redeemed shall be transferred to a separate account called the capital redemption reserve account. Within brackets, you've written CRR account, which can be subsequently utilized only for issuing fully paid up bonus shares. So this capital is, today it looks like CRR account. Tomorrow it will become equity share capital. And that's the only purpose for which this reserve can be utilized. So this is definitely a concrete capital reserve. If you haven't understood even now, I'll just take a very simple example. I'm just taking a bottle of water from the bottom of the fridge and putting it in the freezer. When you take a bottle of water from the bottom and put it in the freezer, water becomes ice and you can't consume it. You can consume it only for specific purposes. Same thing here. I'm solidifying liquid reserves. I'm taking a bottle of water from free reserves and putting it into capital redemption reserve, only to keep my creditors happy. Otherwise, tomorrow the creditors will queue up and start asking for their funds. That is a way. So now, after you've written that condition, mention it in brackets at the end. This journal entry or procedure, ensures protection for the creditors against gearing up leverage of the company measured in terms of the debt equity ratio. Okay, so a provision in a Companies Act section which has its implication or shadows cast in accountancy and financial management. My God, amazing. This is why I am such a fan of networking between subjects. Only that networking increases your comprehension or makes you realize the purpose of a particular requirement or an entry that you pass or a procedure that you complete in any subject. Okay, so there are a lot of things that you've learned now in the last maybe 40-45 minutes. The concept of a cash-rich company, a fund-rich company, and a balanced company. A provision in the Companies Act asking you to pass an accounting entry for the utilization of free reserves, otherwise available for distributed as dividend. Then that is being used for redeeming preference share capital, the face value preference share capital. So the idea is to ensure that the creditors are protected. The creditors are protected only when the debt-equity ratio does not operate against them. So here, the requirement has been explained even with the help of an example. I took 3 random balance sheet extracts to explain the 3 types of companies which have funds or liquidity, and the concept of learning that every expenditure, capital or revenue, doesn't make a difference, will hit 2 points. 1, your profitability, and 2, your liquidity. So you must make room for both of them. It is not sufficient to provide for it, being unable to pay for it. It is not sufficient to be able to pay for it without providing for it. You must provide for and pay for an expenditure in the language of an accountant. Now, these conditions, I'm stressing so much on each of them, the logic behind it, because it's going to repeat. Our next area is also this. The same 6 conditions will repeat apart from another 7 or 8 conditions coming. Okay, so the redemption of preference share capital is done. But before I go into buyback of securities, I would like to bring up or compare the redemption of preference share capital versus the redemption of debentures. In other words, both are redeemed, and I remember having told you that in the preference shares, redeemability and convertibility are mutually exclusive. I repeat what I said, a preference share is by default, that is, unless specified otherwise, redeemable, cumulative, non-participating, or convertible, cumulative, non-participating, by default. So if a company wants to make its preference shares non-cumulative or participative, that will have to be specifically mentioned on the preference share. So redeemability and convertibility, to that extent, preference shares and debentures are the same. In other words, redeemability is common to both the preference shares as well as debentures. Both are redeemable or convertible. I'm dealing the redeemability part. Redeemability of preference shares is covered by the Companies Act. Redeemability of debentures, these conditions don't apply. There are so many other things like you must form a debenture trust. You must evidence it with the debenture trust deed. You must form a debenture redemption reserve account out of your profits every year. And that amount must be invested outside. You must have done that in accounts. Debenture redemption reserve. Just like depreciation reserve or depreciation reserve fund account. These conditions, authorization by the articles, special resolution, how do you redeem it out of what, premium out of what, capital out of what, transfer into CRR. There's no such thing for debentures. This is why. Redeemability of debentures and redeemability of preference shares completely on 2 different footings platforms in the Companies Act. That is because redemption of debentures the terms and conditions in respect of what is parallelly provided for the preference shares or for the preference shares is already decided upfront. On the debenture itself, you have all the terms and conditions. At what premium it will be redeemed? When will it be redeemed? Out of what it will be redeemed, you need not tell them. That is the company's problem. So both of them, although redeemable, they have completely different features underlying. Arising out of the main difference between them, that one is debt capital and the other is owned capital. An accountant uses the words owned funds, loaned funds. This is owned funds. This is loaned funds. Own, loan. Own money, other people's money. So redemption of debentures is governed by a completely different formula, which we will take up later. So I will just revise, because I told you, I want you to not only understand or remember the conditions applicable for redemption of preference shares, I also want you to remember them in that order. Because that order is a beautiful secretarial procedure. Again, I go back to my usual question. If this were to be asked to you in a procedural form, a procedural question, won't you be able to do it? Prestige Limited, a public listed company, has an outstanding redeemable preference share capital of 10 crores. The board of directors proposes to redeem them at a premium of 18%. As an auditor of the company, how do you verify that the provisions of the Companies Act have been complied with? Question A. Question B. Describe a procedure by which this objective can be achieved. Step 1, step 2, step 3. I keep emphasizing on you doing that as a homework every time we come to a provision. Companies Act is a provision. Proceduralize the better. That is a company secretary. That is a disciplined, professional approach to company law. Anything you must be able to convert into a procedure. Do this first, do this next. It's like a flow chart. And obviously everything begins with a board resolution. And what is important is a board resolution. Not to do that thing, because they can't do that thing, they can only recommend that thing. Board resolution, first of all, directors agree to that particular corporate action or strategy, and then deciding the day, date, time, and venue when the general meeting must be held, at which meeting the proposal will be put up before the shareholders and their resolution taken for various purposes, depending on different, populations of approval and consent of that. Okay, so this is the redemption of preference share capital. Going back, articles, special resolution, fully paid up, fresh issue or existing reserves, premium out of free reserves. If you are using free reserves, transfer an amount equal to the face value to capital redeemed to a separate account called the capital redemption reserve account. Now, picking up the thread from there, we move to the next, which is section 68, which I wanted to mention in the margin. I want you to remember this with section number. Section 68, buyback of securities. Section 68 is titled as buyback of security. Very, very important area, not only from the examination perspective, even for a practicing professional like you. The buyback of securities is a relatively new concept. I remember it came in 2006. Before I come to the conditions, the corporate law part of it, the accounting part of it, the financial management part of it, I have a simple question to understand the principle of buyback of securities. There is a section 67 of the Companies Act 2013, parallel to section 77. What a coincidence. 77 Companies Act 1956, 67 Companies Act 2013. Let us say you are an investor or you have certain funds to invest. Given an option between debentures, preference shares and equity shares, if I ask you, what would you prefer? Your natural answer would be debentures. And it is always in that order. Debentures, preference shares, equity. And this order of priority of preference is not only yours. Even the illiterate, uneducated person who has no knowledge of accountancy or company law also says he wants debentures. The slightly more adventurous Indian might go into the preference shares. In short, nobody wants equity. We faced this situation sometime between 2004 and 2006. Investments in the equity sector, especially public sector companies, public companies, dropping like blood pressure. Nobody wants equity. Everybody is looking for debentures because it is safe, or preference shares because it is safe relative to equity shares and also gives you certain assured returns. It combines the features of debentures and equity shares. Nobody wants equity shares for various disadvantages. Section 77A was inserted in the Companies Act 1956 to take away two important disadvantages of equity shares. One big disadvantage of equity share capital is irredeemability. I've been using this phrase before. ഞാൻ ഒരു കമ്പനിയുടെ ഇക്വിറ്റി ഷെയർസിന് ഇൻവെസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്താൽ അത് എനിക്ക് തിരിച്ചു കിട്ടണമെങ്കിൽ ഒന്നുകിൽ കമ്പനി ചാവണം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ ചാവണം. Otherwise, I have to keep looking at the stock market for a favorable price to sell it off. And if I'm bound by time restrictions, I can't do that also. This, the government realized, the Ministry of Company Affairs realized, is a huge disadvantage of equity shares. Preference shares and debentures, they are either redeemable, they are never perpetual. A preference share or debenture is either redeemable or it is convertible. Equity shares, you are stuck to the company. Now that nature was proposed to be disabled through a provision in the last amendment of the Companies Act 1956, which came in 2006. The Companies Amendment Act 2006 brought in the provision of buyback. Now, buyback, and look at the word that I use, it is securities, which means any security can be bought back, whether they are debentures, preference shares, or equity. Today, as of now. So the concept is at least about 13-14 years old, allowing companies to buy back securities which had been issued before prematurely. So the term buyback of securities is used so that the provision can be tapped this facility can be utilized by a company, by the board of directors of a company, to reduce either its debentures or its preferred shares, which are already redeemable, before their actual due date for maturity. And for equity shares, which don't even have a maturity date, equity shares will harness. Harness means to tie up. Will tether an equity shareholder to the company forever without giving him the facility of redeemability. This is the reason why we call it even more risky. So that feature has been pulled back now. But then I can't use the word redeem for equity shares. It's a very bad, technically wrong terminology for equity shares. But effectively that's what has happened. So the Companies Act 2013 today has a redeemability provision for equity shares. It was originally designed for the equity shares, but then they decided, why, when you can bring it for equity shares, why don't you bring it for preference shares or debentures also? So today any security is buybackable. You can buy it back before the scheduled slated date of maturity. So looking at buyback from the perspective of the board of directors, when will such an option be exercised? Either when the company is feeling that it is overcapitalized. I'm overcapitalized, I don't need so much. Tank it. Repay it. Or when you have no other avenue for a lot of liquidity. A company has a lot of liquidity in terms of liquid assets, and there's no diversification prospects coming up, no joint venture prospects, no expansion facilities or projects that the company is immediately looking for. Buyback is good. You can at least reduce your long-term liability. It is just like repaying a loan. Repaying a loan premature. So buyback has multiple objectives. This is a very, very favorite question. Describe the objectives of a company proposing to buy back its securities under Section 68 of the Companies Act. One is to facilitate some kind of a redemption for equity shares also. Two is when it feels it is overcapitalized to repay a part of its capital. And when it feels that it is over liquidated or over liquefied, then a part of that liquidity can be utilized for paying off capital. Okay, so come to the next. After you finish redemption of preference share capital, give a heading using this section number in the margin. Section 68 in the margin. Buyback of securities. Buyback of securities. A company may buy back. A company may buy back. Any class may buy back any class of securities issued at any time subject to the prescribed conditions. Subject to the specified conditions. Okay, full stop. Although The provision was originally meant although the provision was originally meant to create was originally meant to create a payback facility for equity shares comma, the provisions extend to debentures and preference shares also. The provisions extend to debentures and preference shares also. Thereby facilitating a premature redemption, for preference shares and debentures. Okay, so remember, debentures or preference shares are either redeemable or convertible. Now it can be repaid earlier than its schedule. So that's the advantage of buyback. Okay, now in the next line, therefore, the objectives of a buyback procedure may be summarized as follows. Okay, -1. To facilitate a redemption-like facility. For equity share capital. To facilitate a redemption-like facility for equity share capital. Now the first one. 2. Second one. 2. To enable premature retirement. To enable premature retirement of debt. Repayment in order, retirement in order when it comes to debt. to enable premature retirement of debt. 3. To provide an avenue. To provide an avenue to reduce capital. When a company is overcapitalized. To reduce capital when a company is overcapitalized. Okay, and number 4, to provide an alternative, to provide for an alternative investment option, to provide for an alternative investment option. So I'm looking at it as an investment also now. An investment in the form of reduction of debt. To provide for an alternative investment option. In times of over liquidity. Okay, comma, other than expansions, diversifications, or other ventures or collaborations. Okay, so I'm looking at it, I'm using a very peculiar terminology. I'm using excess liquidity for repaying debt premature. Instead of, maybe a company has reached that peak. It happened with Reliance. Reliance did a buyback 2-3 years back. And that it was buyback of equity shares. So basically the original intention was for equity shares, but then they decided why not allow it for the other securities also. Now, I want to be careful before I start with the provisions. Don't use the word purchase. This is a buyback. Use only that phrase. You're buying it. Buying it means you're paying and taking it back because it was issued earlier. So a company is buying back equity, preference, shares or debentures from its shareholders or debenture holders and repaying them. Obviously, you can't buy back the entire capital. There's a restriction, there's a limit. All those conditions are coming apart from what we had seen before. Which is that last point? Liquidity. When a company has a lot of liquidity, cash reserves, cash and bank balance, 120 crores. It could have been out of profits, it could have been a capital receipt, whatever it is. Our liquidity use here, avenue opens here. So when I have a lot of cash in my pocket, I can either acquire an asset or I can repay a debt. Acquiring asset I don't want because I have plenty. I already have all the plant and machinery that I need. I don't need to even replace anything. And most of them are fresh. So there's no avenue for capital expenditure. So this is one method by which you can tank or remove that excess liquidity. It's an avenue for streamlining liquidity. So overcapitalization or over liquidification can be settled, can be sorted out by resorting to a buyback. Don't use the word purchase. I'm not using the word purchase back or just purchase or repurchase. They all have different meanings. I'm coming to that after I finish these problems. Why I'm not using the word purchase? So this is the concept of buyback. The idea of a buyback is to redeem, and if it is already redeemable, to redeem premature. So these are the objectives. This is the history, or this is how the concept of buyback came. So buyback could be of equity share capital, which is what it is meant for, or it could be preference share capital, or it could be debentures. Any of them can be bought back by a company from its security holders. Now, the 6 conditions that we have already seen for redemption repeat themselves verbatim, even for the concept of buyback. Of course, I don't want you to repeat those conditions, but we will at least mention that those conditions are set. So that our first condition here will become number 7. But then, if there's a question asked in the examination, what are the conditions for buyback? Don't say same as redemption. I'm doing it here to save effort, to save time. So these conditions are all prescribed by section 68. There are 15 conditions, out of which the initial 6 are the same. Why? Because the concept is the same. I told you the idea of a buyback was to facilitate redemption of equity share capital. So whatever happens to redemption of preference share capital will apply to redemption of equity share capital also, or preference share capital earlier. Okay, so give us subheading: conditions for a buyback procedure. Conditions for a buyback procedure. Okay, now I don't want you to put it as 1. You just write an introductory paragraph and then you go straight to 7. So just mention an introductory paragraph there. The terms and conditions. The terms and conditions applicable. The terms and conditions applicable to redemption of preference share capital. The terms and conditions applicable to redemption of preference share capital equally effectively apply to a buyback of securities also. Okay, full stop. The other conditions for a buyback procedure, are as follows. The other conditions for a buyback procedure are as follows. You will put a hyphen and start with number 7. But before you start with 7, let me just revise the others. Articles, special resolution, fully paid up. I don't have to change even a word there. Fresh issue or existing free reserves. Premium on a buyback out of existing free reserves. Sixth condition, if you are funding it, if you are sourcing the funds out of existing free reserves, then an amount parallel to the face value of the securities bought back shall be transferred to a reserve account called, still the name is the same. Don't change the name as capital buyback reserve. It is still called CRR account, the capital redemption reserve account, which can be utilized subsequently or later only for issue of fully paid up bonus shares. Get it? So those 6 conditions are exactly as it is. They reproduce verbatim, except that wherever you have used the word redemption, other than capital redemption reserve account, just replace it by buy. And instead of saying shares, you will mention securities. Now we come to additional conditions. Shall we fresh now and start? We'll take a break of about 10 or 15 minutes. I'll be back. I'll just see how badly the cyclone has hit Mumbai. Mumbai is the eye of the storm. So we'll just come back after 10 or 15 minutes. So we'll continue. We have stopped at the commonality. I said the first 6 conditions are common between section 55 and section 68. 55 is redemption, 68 is buyback. So all those 6 conditions will repeat as it is, just that you will remove the word redemption and use the word buyback other than in the name of that reserve account, the capital redemption reserve account. It still continues to be called the capital redemption reserve. You don't call it the capital buyback reserve. Now comes the additional conditions, which, as we said, will start from 7. What are the other conditions? Under almost all these conditions, everywhere I'm going to use a number. See, apart from those 6 conditions, the 7th condition is, as I told you, you can't allow a company to buy back the entire thing at one shot, even if you may have the money for it. That is not the way that a company functions. Be it equity or preference or debentures, there should be a limit, there should be a ceiling on how much can be bought back at a time. And that limit is 25%. The buyback at any particular point of time shall not be more than 25% of the paid up capital and free reserves, including the securities premium account for this purpose. in the case of preference shares or debentures. That means if you're buying back preference shares or debentures, the maximum buyback at a point of time should be 25% of the paid up capital and free reserves. But if you're dealing with equity shares, then it is 25% of the paid up equity share capital. Because it was originally designed for the equity shares, we give that facility for equity shares. ഒരു സമയത്ത് up to 25% you can buy back. So there is a limit. Which 25%? That you have to decide by the special resolution. You remember the special resolution gives you the specific terms and conditions for that particular buyback. Which 25%? That is, who are the shareholders from whom you are going to take back the securities? What will be the premium? Within what time will you complete it? What are the options for the payment to the shareholders? All these terms and conditions. That is the essence of that special resolution. So the special resolution passed will contain details of approval of all these things when you are referring to section 16 of the buyback. Now I'm going to add to the complication here. If you are buying back, the buyback quantum, the volume, should not be more than 25% of the paid up capital and free reserves with respect to debentures or preference shares. And it should not exceed 25% of the paid up equity share capital if you are buying back equity shares at a particular time. Now, if your buyback is restricted to, it is not more than 10% of these prescribed limits, then a board resolution is sufficient. Nice. %25% is the limit. But if at a particular point in time you're going to keep it to less than 10%, not more than 10%, then the special resolution is not required. A board resolution is sufficient. If the board authorizes it, that is required. So the board resolution is sufficient when the buyback is restricted to 10% of the limit percent of the paid up capital free reserves or 10% of paid up equity share capital. So 0 to 10% board resolution enough. 10% to 25% board resolution plus special resolution. Above 25%, not possible. The limit is 25%. Get it? So I'm introducing two numbers here, 25% and 10%. So this will be our condition number 7. So come to condition number 7. The volume of buyback at one instance shall not exceed hyphen A 25% of the paid up capital and free reserves. 25% of the paid up capital and free reserves, hyphen, in case of in case of preference shares or debentures. In case of preference shares or debentures. And B, 25% of paid up equity share capital 25% of paid up equity share capital hyphen in case of equity share capital. $25% of paid up equity share capital hyphen if it is equity share capital or in case of equity share capital. Okay, so we have to be very careful here. We have to keep specifying. We may have to become security specific in our provisions. Debentures, preference shares, 25% of paid up capital plus free reserves. Equity shares, 25% of paid up equity share capital. Okay, now in the next line, don't put it as C. Just write it on the next line. However, comma, if the quantum of buyback at one instance, if the quantum of buyback at one instance does not exceed 10% of the prescribed limits. 10% of the prescribed limits as applicable of the prescribed limits as applicable, comma, a board resolution is sufficient. A board resolution is sufficient. And the company resolution is not required. Is sufficient and the company resolution is not required. Okay, so preferably underline all these numbers. We are going to use a lot of numbers here. 25% here, 10% here. So get the condition. The buyback at one particular point of time should not exceed 25%. 25% of what? Paid up capital and free reserves. If you are buying back debentures or preference shares. If you are buying back equity shares, not more than 25% of paid up equity share capital. But if it is not more than 10%, it is so small, the buyback, then if the board approves it through a resolution, that is sufficient, which means there is a bare minimum requirement. So if the buyback at any given point of time does not exceed 10% of that prescribed paid up capital and free reserves or the paid up equity share capital, then you need not get the approval of the members through a special resolution. The board resolution is sufficient authority. Okay, so this is a modification of your second condition. Second of the common conditions. The first one was authorization by articles that continues here undilutedly. The second condition where you require approval by special resolution there, whatever be the volume. Here, that is slightly diluted. Now we move to the eighth condition. 6 common plus the seventh plus the eighth one. The eighth condition is after a buyback is completed, after the entire procedure is over, like fresh issue made, that proceeds is collected, you pay off to the debenture holders or equity shareholders or preference shareholders, or you use your existing free reserves, use the money that you have, transfer to CRR account. After all that procedure, the post buyback, I will call it post buyback debt equity ratio should not exceed 2:1. Nice. This was the indirect intention behind asking to transfer to CRR account when you are using your existing free reserves. Here in section 68, the condition is directly put. The post buyback debt equity ratio or post buyback debt should not be more than 2 times the equity. So here it is very interesting to see that a company law provision, a Companies Act provision is borrowing a financial management ratio. Financial management ratios are basically used for diagnosing the health of a company. You feel the pulse of a company through the balance sheet and the P&L account, or taking both together. So there it's all ideal numbers which are prescribed, market numbers which are prescribed. We don't expect any corporate law to pick up a ratio or a proportion which is used for balance sheet diagnostics. But here it has been done. Section 68 says, after the buyback is completed, so the company secretary or the auditor would have to sit and calculate that ratio first, beforehand. That's kind of buyback of kind of as everything has to be calculated, all the numbers have to be very clearly set up. And after buyback, when you see the debt equity ratio should not be more than 2:1. The section does not use 2:1. The section says debt should not exceed equity by more than 2 times. Effectively, it is 2:1. Okay. So condition number 8. The post buyback debt equity ratio shall not exceed the post buyback debt equity ratio shall not exceed 2:1. The post buyback debt equity ratio shall not exceed 2:1. Of course, I know that there are 2 ways of calculating debt equity ratio. Debt by equity or debt by debt plus equity. 2 ways to do it. Unless otherwise specified, debt equity ratio means debt by equity. So it is only a confusion that I added. You should not have this. So after all the formalities are over, after the dust has settled in a buyback, when you take the balance sheet and calculate the debt equity ratio, it should not be more than 2:1. So calculate all your borrowings from existing free reserves, or after the fresh issue of securities, or issue those securities which will satisfy this debt equity ratio. So after the debt equity, after the buyback procedure, debt equity ratio should not be 2:1, means it must be calculated before or predetermined. The method, the volume, the utilization. Okay, so that's the 8th condition. Now, the 9th condition is self-explanatory. A buyback, once it is started, once you pass a special resolution, from the special resolution, within 12 months, it should be complete. The entire procedure must be completed within 12 months. Interesting. Even for issue of capital, it is 12 months. Once capital is issued by a company, you remember I told you this. Capital issued within 12 months, the entire call must have come off. Even after 12 months are over of opening an issue, if there are still some calls due, those shares must be forfeited. Similarly here, from the date you pass that special resolution or board resolution, special resolution not required, whatever it is, that resolution. From the date of that resolution, within 12 months, the entire procedure must be completed. So put it down. Condition number 9. The buyback procedure shall be completed. The procedure for buyback shall be completed within 12 months. Within 12 months. Of the special resolution. Within 12 months of the special resolution. So I repeat, let me remind you, this is the third additional condition. There are 6 common conditions to preference redemption and buyback of securities. This is the third additional, apart from the common conditions. Right now, the 10th condition. The 10th condition is something interesting. This brings out a huge difference between buyback and redemption. I want to explain that difference first. Why is preferential capital redeemed to reissue them again? Preference share capital is circulating capital. Preference share capital was issued 7 years back to about 12,500 preference shareholders. Today, I redeem it. After redeeming it, the same preference shares with maybe different terms and conditions are issued to another 10,000 shareholders. Then take it from them. Then another set of shareholders. Look at the difference between equity, preference, and debentures. Debentures, once redeemed, it is over. Debentures, once converted, becomes equity. Preference shares converted becomes equity. Preference shares redeemed keep circulating. The same thing happens with debentures. So redeemable securities are redeemed with the idea of issuing them again, reissuing them. That is not the purpose of buyback. ഞാൻ ഇന്ന് ബൈബാക്ക് ചെയ്തിട്ട് നാളെ അതേ സെക്യൂരിറ്റീസ് ഇഷ്യൂ ചെയ്യാം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ വീണ്ടും ബൈബാക്ക് ചെയ്യാം. The purpose of a buyback is lost. This is why the objectives of a buyback are important. To ensure that a company does not reissue bought back securities, there's a condition that the securities bought back shall be destroyed in 7 days of completing the last buyback. Physically destroyed. The securities bought back shall be physically destroyed within 7 days, and the details must be filed with the registrar that this has been done. So from the last date, even I told you this for issue also. Issue of share capital is not an overnight affair. It takes time. Similarly, redemption takes time. Exit option takes time. Buyback takes time. So from the date the last buyback is completed, within 7 days from there, The securities bought back shall be physically destroyed to ensure that they are not reissued, because that is not the idea of a buyback. This condition cannot be stipulated for redemption of preference shares or redemption of debentures. This is exclusively for buyback. Again, I'm using a number 7 days. Within 7 days of the last buyback, physical destruction. Now the question arises, what if these shares are the demat form? Demat shares are soft shares. Now the person, the intermediary who is responsible for issuing demat shares or converting into demat is a depository participant. That depository participant will record it in his register. That is sufficient. So the securities bought back shall be physically or electronically destroyed within 7 days of the last buyback. Mention that next. Number 10. The securities bought back shall be destroyed okay, within brackets, recorded as such electronically, within brackets, recorded as such electronically if demat. If demat, I'll be explaining demat in this chapter. If demat, close brackets, within 7 days, of the last buyback, another number, within 7 days of the last buyback. Okay, so the securities bought back shall be destroyed, electronically recorded as such if it is in the demat form, within 7 days of the last buyback. So 25%, 10%, 2:1, 12 months, 7 days, all these numbers to be highlighted. I'm sorry to say, you have to remember those numbers. So within 7 days, they are destroyed. There will be no sign of these securities. The capital will start reduced to that extent. Now comes the next issue. Suppose I have done a buyback today. Today happens to be the 3rd June, 3/6/2020. A buyback procedure has been completed. And let us say the buyback relates to equity shares. Then there are 2 questions to be answered. When can I make a fresh issue of equity share? Suppose I want it. How long should I wait, or do I have to wait? And number 2, suppose I want to buy back again. When should that be done? So after a buyback of one particular class of securities, how long will the company have to wait to either make another issue of securities of the same class, or to effect another buyback of securities of the same class? Here again numbers are used. It is 6 months and 1 year. For 6 months, you can't make an issue of securities of the same class. For 1 year, you can't effect another buyback of securities of the same class. However, there's one thing you'll be careful about. When you say issue, this is actual issue, doesn't involve conversion. Just take an example. Today, on the 3rd of June 2020, I have bought back equity shares, and exactly 1.5 months from now, on 18th July, there are some debentures or preference shares which should be converted into equity. അതിനാ convert ചെയ്താൽ issue ആയിട്ട് treat ഇല്ല. So that will not come in the main of the issue. The company should not issue fresh securities of that class by way of a further public offer or initial public offer or whatever it is for a period of 6 months. And you want if it's another buyback, you have to wait for 1 year. Here I say 1 year, but here I say 12 months effectively the same. So for 1 year, you can't effect another buyback. Technically, company secretaries have a terminology for this time. They call it cooling period. Either you call it cooling period or a cool off period. Both ways, effect is the same. So the cooling period is 6 months for an issue of securities of the same class. The cooling period is 1 year to effect another buyback of securities of the same class after a buyback is complete. Again, a set of numbers. Okay, so condition number 11. Condition number 11. After a buyback is completed, after a buyback is completed, the company shall not hyphen A after buyback is completed, the company shall not hyphen A make another issue of securities of the same class. Make another issue of securities of the same class, comma, for 6 months. For 6 months. Okay, within brackets, otherwise than by way of conversions. Otherwise than by way of conversions. Close brackets, comma, or B. B. Effect another buyback. Effect another buyback of securities of the same class. Effect another buyback of securities of the same class for a period of 12 months. Sorry, 1 year. For a period of 1 year. For a period of 1 year. Okay, full stop. In the next slide. This period of prohibition is technically called cooling period. Cooling period. There is an imagination that buyback creates a lot of heat. So sit back and cool down for 6 months or for 12 months as the case may be. Then only you can go for the next issue or the other buyback. Okay, so another buyback restriction 1 year, issue of securities of the same class, because unless this condition is prescribed, the object of the buyback is lost. The idea of a buyback is to reduce capital. And after reducing capital, if you issue the same capital again, then what's the point? Of course, no company will do it. All these provisions are made for companies to utilize the opportunity at the right time. It all depends on the management team. How do you decide the buyback time, an amalgamation time, when to take a loan, when to expand? The timing, that comes only with business acumen. So all these are tools which the Companies Act is giving to you. How you use it, when you use it, where you use it. It depends on your skill. This is what the MBAs are taught. MBAs actually learn, MBA finance. How to do, what to do, when to do. And the chartered accountant, the auditor verifies whether you have done it at the right time. A chartered accountant is not called upon to do it, it is practice, it is knowledge. If your finance manager is a chartered accountant, then you need that financial management acumen or management accounting, experts. Buyback, redemption, issue of share capital, conversion. These are tools which the Companies Act is giving to the finance manager. An auditor will verify whether you have done it according to law and whether it has been disclosed properly. A secretarial auditor will report whether you have done it according to the provisions of law. So I have to do it as per the provisions of the law. When it is required, not that it's not that. When to do it, what to do, and how to do it. Completely depends on the finance manager, the accounts manager. If you have the accounts and finance department split into two, finance and accounts, it's what you've done. Then this is completely a choice, a call to be taken by the finance department, the finance branch. Okay, so for another 6 months or 12 months, you can't do that. Issue of shares or buying back another set or series of securities of the same class. Because if the provision is not there, the objective is not fulfilled. Right? So this is condition number 11. Now take condition number 12. Condition number 12. Remember, that is the 6th additional condition. 6 common condition plus 5 additional conditions. This is the 6th one. That will make it the 12th one. The 12th condition. It is again, I'm going to repeat this in so many other provisions. Of course, not many provisions at the inter level. Many provisions will come up at the final level. We penalize a company for not doing certain corporate actions as per the law. This is one of them. A company which has defaulted on deposits, not repaying when it is due, not paying interest during the lifetime of deposits, or a company which has defaulted on dividend payments, after declaring it, or a company which has defaulted in redemption of preference share capital, or a company which has defaulted on statutory dues like taxes, employees' contributions, provident fund, ESI, etc., is prohibited from buying. So actually, I should have put this before. At least this is not a condition which has a number. There's no number. So a company which has defaulted on any of these and still continues to be a defaulter with respect to deposits, with respect to declared dividends or preference dividends, redemption of preference share capital, or the payment of its statutory dues is prohibited from effecting a buyback of securities of any class. Okay, so take down that next as the 12th. A company which has defaulted on deposits accepted. A company which has defaulted on deposits accepted or payment of declared dividends or failed to redeem debentures on time. Or failed to redeem debentures on time. Or defaulted on statutory dues. Or defaulted on statutory dues. Comma, is prohibited from effecting a buyback of securities of any class. Is prohibited from effecting a buyback of securities of any class. Comma, when the default is subsisting. When the default is subsisting, that means when the default continues, you can't do it. When the default is subsisting. Okay, so that is the condition number 12. A condition where no number is prescribed. So this is an outright prohibition or making the buyback procedure conditional. If you satisfy that condition only, a company can buy back its shares, and that too, even if it is allowed, you have a limit of 25%, 10%, and so on. Now the next condition is a condition of, or which is routine. After a buyback is completed, every company must file a return on buyback with 30 days. And this is something we are familiar with. We started with allotment actions, return of allotment. After every corporate action completed by a company, for example, a notice for winding up, capital reduction, changing name, changing objects, shifting from one place to another. Because the registrar is actually a database for companies. So every action that a company does has to be fed back. You must give a feedback. We call it, and this is done through the instrument of a return. So every company shall file a return of buyback. in the prescribed format. There's a prescribed format for it. There's a form number within 30 days of the last buyback. Okay, so number 13. A company shall file a return of buyback a company shall file a return of buyback within 30 days. Within 30 days of the last buyback. Within 30 days of the last buyback. With the registrar. With the registrar. Providing full particulars. Providing full particulars. And in the prescribed form. And in the prescribed form. So that was number 13. Coming to the last event, what would be the last one? Just to see if you have developed the taste for company law as of now. The last condition is naturally about the register as a company to maintain. Every company shall maintain the buyback register. One or more registers in which details of all the buybacks are put by the company. So that is another register which a company should maintain, just like register of members, register of fixed assets, register of charges. There are so many registers which a company must maintain. One of the registers is this. Every company should maintain a register, and normally when a register is maintained, you can do it electronically. The entries must be updated in the registers. But this is another evidence, or this is another part of the books of accounts of a company. Books of accounts of a company include registers, statements, returns, documents, books, anything which supplies information on the financial data, on the financial statements. So it's a normal principle that when you maintain a register of charges, for example, register of fixed assets, within 7 days of any event happening affecting it, the entry will have to be made in the register. Okay, so maintain means prescribe the maintenance of. So put it as a 14th condition. Every company shall maintain one or more registers. Every company shall maintain one or more registers. To record one or more registers to record details of every buyback effected. Every buyback effected. Okay, so normally all these corporate actions end with those two conditions. A return to be filed, normally in 30 days. And a register to be maintained, into which all the details of the buyback must be entered. How many shares of which shareholder was bought back, what was the price, the date of the resolution passed, the date of the company resolution, the date of the board resolution. So all these details, and I told you all these registers are standardized. There's a particular form in which it has to be made. And that form prefix normally is based on the prefix of the chapter head. So every company should maintain a buyback register. Now, just like I was talking about redemption, or just like I was talking about shifting of share capital, changing name, if this is asked to you in a procedural form, you should be able to imagine and lay it down as a roadmap. What to do first, what next, what after that, what after that. So as a chartered accountant or as an auditor, you should also be able to prescribe a flow charted process for a company. How would you advise a company to go about doing it? Or if you were doing it for a company, how would you do it? Step by step. These are conditions. These are provisions of the law, which I have given. How do you set those provisions into a procedure? How do you make it procedural is another talent. Try it. You can do all this as homework exercises. How do you convert or how do you compile all the provisions, make it compact into a procedure? That gives you a beautiful insight into that particular provision. Right now, you are at the inter level. Final students will also have to learn the SEBI buyback regulations. But then, the SEBI provides only for the provision of, or it provides the provision of buyback of own securities. So just like I was talking of in the previous chapter, the concept of issue of prospectus and allotment of securities. A listed company, a listed public company, will have to comply with the Companies Act, with the company's rules, as well as the appropriate or the applicable SEBI regulations that deal with that particular issue. Okay, make a note of that in the next slide. A listed public company, don't put it as 50. The conditions are over. Below that, in the next slide, a listed public company is required to comply with the provisions of a listed public company is required to comply with the provisions of the SEBI, T capital, the SEBI, open brackets, buyback of securities. Buyback of securities. Close brackets, regulations. Buyback of securities, close brackets, regulations. Also. Now there, I mean, although it is out of context for you, there it is pretty complicated on the technical aspects. The moment SEBI comes in, we have stock exchanges coming into the picture. So that regulation is going to ask a company to keep reporting on the details of the buyback to the stock exchange also. And if it's a listed public company, before going to anybody for an approval, you have to first intimate the stock exchange. There you have various methods by which a company can do the buyback. For example, so you can buy it back from the open market. You can buy it back through the stock exchange mechanism. You can buy it back from odd lot dealers. There are so many procedures. Each of them, what you have to do, and what should be the contents of the notice and the explanatory statement which you send to the shareholders, inviting them to the general meeting at which the special resolution is proposed to be passed. All those things are contained in the regulations. So at this level, you only need to know that there is a particular SEBI regulation. SEBI also deals with buyback. And naturally, for a listed public company, you have to comply with. If at all there's a clash in the provisions, you have to comply with the worst of them. And we have done this for issue of capital, comparing provisions of the Companies Act vis-a-vis the SEBI ICDR regulations when a company is issuing capital. Things like, a subscription open period, opening of subscription lists, minimum subscription, all of them deal with the same concept of subscription. So similarly, we have a similar clash here also. Of course, the clash is very little because SEBI regulations, SEBI buyback of securities regulations is more or less procedure. What are the different methods by which a company can do this? Okay, so that is the comparative study between sections 55 and 68, buyback and redemption of preference share capital. Now I need to elaborate a little bit on why is it that the term buyback is used and not purchase. Now I want to understand this carefully. 67, this is section 68, which talks of about, you saw 9 additional conditions or 8 additional conditions apart from the common conditions which apply to the redemption of preference share capital also. I'm just drawing a distinction between the concept of buyback and the concept of purchase of shares by a company. Purchase of own shares. This is buyback of securities. Buyback, both the words are important. When you say buyback, you are reacquiring securities which had been issued or allotted previously. But in the case of purchase of own shares, a company is trying to misutilize its separate legal entity concept. Now, I will put it this way because here I am dealing with section 67. This is section 67. And this is section 68. Section 67 very interestingly makes a provision that. Now, I wanted to understand or imagine that that is also possible. No company shall purchase its own shares or lend financial assistance to any person to purchase its own shares. Now, 67 പറയുന്നു. And soon after that, you have section 68 authorizing a company to buy back its shares. Then it becomes very important to understand the difference between these two. There could be a question directly on that. Distinguish between purchase of own shares by a company and buyback of securities by a company. Now, I'm imagining a very weird situation, a very clumsy phenomenon. Just imagine, just see how the possibility works. A company is today, let us say it's a company called Figure. Figure Limited issues 10 lakh equity shares of blah 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 blah. 10 lakh equity shares are issued. The company is hesitant to enter into an underwriting agreement. Keeping the prospectus and section 26 aside, what is the minimum subscription here? 9 lakh equity shares, in respect of which the application money should have come. This is the minimum subscription. The issue opens on 3/6/2020 and the issue is scheduled to close on 10/6/2020. Remember, 10 working days, 15 days. SEBI Companies Act. So on 3rd, the issue is open. It is scheduled to close on 10th of June. 10 lakh shares issued. And I know the goal before me, the target before me is 9 lakh equities. Time passes. It reaches 8th June. 8th June, 7,30,000 shares only subscribed for. My company is worried. I have another 2 days and I need at least subscription for 1,70,000 shares. The company decides to use a loophole because a company is a separate legal entity. The company says, I will invest in my own shares. The company pays itself and it shows it on the liability side and the assets. On the liability side, capital goes up to the next side. On the asset side, it shows investments. Can a company do this? Company is a separate legal entity. I told you 90% of the problems in the company's act arise because the company is a separate legal entity. That feature can be misused. It can be twisted. So here, because the company is an artificial, separate, legal, perpetual entity, it decides to get away with the problem of minimum subscription by purchasing its own shares. Not allowed. Or this company catches hold of a partnership firm and says, come here, I'll give you a loan. You buy my shares. So that is indirectly purchasing your own shares. So no company shall purchase its own shares directly by acquisition or indirectly by funding somebody else for the banks. See the major difference between it. In buying back of shares, there also you're actually purchasing. The company is buying and paying the shareholders. Here the company is buying and paying itself. So there's no cash movement. I pass one single entry. Investments in shares of Figure Limited to equity share capital account. Great. So in purchase of equity shares, let us take equity shares as an example. In purchase of equity shares, your capital is increasing. In buying back equity shares, your capital is reducing. That is allowed. I don't know why, but it reminds me of Madam Parvati, Mrs. Shiva. Parvati was also like her husband to the extent that she couldn't manage hunger. If Parvati gets hungry, she loses her cool. You can imagine. Ganapati is her son. So the husband, the wife, and the child, all three have the same problem. They can't manage hunger. And Parvati had this problem quite a bit. So she was given a boon. Parvati used to have a special body system. If she feels hungry or thirsty, and there is nothing available around at that time, she had the facility of drinking her own blood. She removes her head, detaches it, and keeps its mouth upwards. Blood pumps up from the body and goes to the mouth. And once she is happy, head is fixed back. You drink your own blood to satisfy your hunger. Parvati Madam could do it. Company issuing share capital. Cantonment said like this. Take it, put it back. That is actually this concept of purchasing own shares or funding somebody for purchasing own. So you get the difference. It's a very, very likely question. Distinguish between purchase of own shares by a company and buyback of securities by a company. So again, I cannot allow a company to benefit from its own mistake. Just because you're a separate legal entity, you can't trade with yourself. You can't invest in yourself. You can't pay yourself. Separate legal entity is a feature which does not authorize you to do all those things. So that is the concept of purchase of own shares. So purchase of own shares and buyback of securities are two different things. Okay, in the next line, mention section 67 in the margin, purchase of own shares by a company. In the margin, section 67, purchase of own shares by a company. No company shall purchase or acquire no company shall purchase or acquire its own shares. Purchase or acquire its own shares. Or lend or otherwise provide. Or lend or otherwise provide financial assistance. Or lend or otherwise provide financial assistance. Financial assistance to any person. To any person for such purpose. For such purpose. Okay, just to avoid a misunderstanding, open brackets there. Open bracket I mentioned, except as provided for. Except as provided for in section 68. Except as provided for in section 68. Okay, so that linking, that distinction, what is allowed, what is not allowed, we need to get. So close brackets there. Okay, in the next line, in a buyback of shares, in a buyback of securities, in a buyback of securities, comma, capital reduction is the result. Capital reduction is the result. Okay, comma, but when the company purchases its own shares, but when a company purchases its own shares, comma, it indirectly participates or invests. It indirectly participates or invests in its own share capital. It indirectly participates or invests in its own share capital. Which cannot be permitted. Which cannot be permitted. Okay, full stop. In the absence of such a provision, comma, a company can, in the absence of such a provision, comma, a company can misutilize. A company can misutilize its separate legal entity feature. A company can misutilize its separate legal entity feature and avoid various crucial provisions of the Act. And avoid various crucial provisions of the Act. Open brackets, like minimum subscription in a public issue. Like minimum subscription in a public issue. Okay, so buyback is an area, close brackets of course. Buyback is an area which can be asked to you in accounts also. In your company accounting, I think it is advanced accounts or accounts 2, in which you have issue of shares, redemption of preference shares, debentures, redemption. This could be a question asked there. So when you are doing it, you will do it in accounts also. So when you do it in accounts, it may have already been covered also, I don't know. So do connect this between corporate accounting and corporate law. I've been repeating this time and again. Everything that you do in company accounts is nothing but a product of or a provision of company law as such. Like, for example, why do you create a CRR account, or what will happen if you don't create it? All that is something that you do in accounts. The entries that you pass in company accounts are because of the legal provisions in the company's accounts. Right, so with that we have completed two major aspects. Buyback, therefore, accountancy or law or auditing. There could be a question. Okay, so you have the reflection in accounts also of these chapters. Right, so we can conclude with that for this session. We'll continue in the next, where I'll be dealing with different types of capital issues to be made by a company. Yes. Shruti, I'm waiting for you to type it out. For the others, we'll meet the next time. I think my next class is scheduled for 9. So bye till then, take care. Ah, how does a transfer to CRR affect the debt equity ratio? When you take equity in debt equity ratio, the equity includes capital reserves. It is shareholders' funds, Shruti. So when you're computing the debt equity ratio, you take the debt, long-term debt, divided by share capital plus reserves and surplus. Or in other words, capital redemption reserve will be taken as part of equity share capital in computing debt equity ratio. So reserves and surplus will have to be, so equity includes only capital reserves and not free reserves. For certain purposes, you take free reserves also. In other words, if the free reserves are not earmarked for any special purpose, of course, that is the meaning of free reserves. But there are different types by which companies, designate their free reserves. So generally, no, it is equity share capital and capital reserves. Right? So see you the next time.